history is basically a long list of people finding creative ways to kill each other for the gods. And honestly, ancient people were way more creative than we are. Today, we just tweet mean things. Back then, if the rain didn't fall, someone was definitely losing a heart, usually while it was still beating. Welcome to the most brutal rituals of ancient civilizations. Grab a snack, but maybe not a meat-based one. First stop, Central Mexico, the Aztecs. These guys were the undisputed heavyweight champions of human sacrifice. They believed the sun needed sacred water, which is just a fancy Aztec marketing term for human blood. No blood, no sunrise. No sunrise, no crops. No crops, well, you get the idea. Everyone dies anyway. The ritual was simple. 4 priests hold your limbs, and 1 high priest uses an obsidian knife on your chest. Obsidian is sharper than steel, so it's like a hot knife through butter, except the butter is screaming. Once the heart was out, they'd kick the body down the temple stairs. It's like a deadly, fleshy slinky. Historians estimate they killed 20,000 people a year. That's a lot of cleanup duty for the temple interns. But wait, it gets weirder. During the festival of Tozotzantli, they would actually skin the victims. Then the priests would wear the skin for 20 days. To celebrate spring, as one does. I bet that smelled fantastic in the Mexican heat. Talk about a questionable fashion statement. Now, let's head north to the Vikings. They had a little something called the blood eagle. First, they'd cut your back open and separate your ribs from your spine, using a knife, slowly. Then they'd pull your lungs out through the holes to make them look like wings, because art. The goal was to see if you could stay quiet during the whole process. If you screamed, no Valhalla for you. Imagine failing the entrance exam to heaven because you couldn't handle your lungs being externalized. Next up, Carthage. They had a bronze statue of a god named Moloch, and Moloch was a hungry boy. Moloch didn't want goats, he wanted babies, specifically the babies of the wealthy elite. The statue's hands were sloped, so the child would slide right into a bronze fire pit inside the belly. To drown out the screams, the Carthaginians played loud drums and flutes. High-energy ritual, low-energy survival rate. Some historians say this was Roman propaganda, but the archaeological evidence says, no, they definitely did it. Moving to ancient Rome, everyone loves the Colosseum, right? Gladiators, lions, bread, and circuses. But have you heard of the Vestal Virgins? They were priestesses who kept the sacred fire of Vesta burning. If the fire went out, or if they broke their vow of chastity, the punishment was intense. Since it was illegal to spill the blood of a Vestal, the Romans got creative. They buried them alive. They'd give them a loaf of bread and a lamp, then seal the tomb. So they could starve in the dark. It's not an execution, it's just a very permanent, very underground studio apartment. No windows. Let's talk about the Scythians. These nomadic warriors from the steppes really loved their enemies, or parts of them. When a Scythian killed a foe, they'd saw off the top of the skull and turn it into a drinking cup. They also used the skin of their enemies' hands to make quivers for their arrows. Handmade gear, literally. Imagine reaching for an arrow and accidentally high-fiving the guy you killed last week. Awkward. In ancient Fiji, when a chief died, they didn't want him to be lonely in the afterlife because that's sad. So they'd perform strangulation of the wives. Yes, they'd kill his wives so they could serve him in the spirit world. The wives often went willingly, or at least that's what the guys with the ropes told everyone. Nothing says I love you like being forced to accompany your dead husband to a place you aren't ready to go. Now to Japan for the Sokushinbutsu. This wasn't a punishment, it was a choice. A really, really bad choice. Monks would try to mummify themselves while they were still alive. Step 1, eat only nuts and seeds for 1,000 days. Step 2, drink a toxic tea made from the sap of the urushi tree. This stuff is used to make lacquer. It makes your body so poisonous that maggots won't eat you after you die. Finally, a solution for the bug problem. Finally, they'd lock themselves in a stone tomb with a bell. They'd ring it once a day to let people know they were alive. When the bell stopped ringing, the tomb was sealed. If you succeeded, you were a god. If you failed, you were just jerky. Let's look at the Maya.
They had a ritual involving a ball game called pits. It was like basketball, but with higher stakes. The losers didn't just lose the trophy. They often lost their heads. Talk about a motivation to practice your free throws. Sometimes the winners were sacrificed too, because being the best meant you were the best gift for the gods. Imagine winning the Super Bowl and the prize is a one-way trip to the sun god's dining room. No thanks. Then we have the Thuggee cult in India. They spent centuries strangling travelers as a sacrifice to the gods Kali. They used a yellow scarf and were so efficient that they supposedly killed over 2 million people. Efficiency goals? They believed every murder prevented Kali from destroying the world, so technically they were saving us. You're welcome. In ancient China, during the Shang dynasty, they practiced retainer sacrifice. If a king died, his whole staff went with him. Guards, servants, even horses. They were all killed and buried in the tomb. Career loyalty taken to a literal extreme. In ancient Egypt, they did something similar during the First Dynasty, but they probably realized it was bad for the economy. Later on, they replaced real people with little statues called ushapti. Much better for the LinkedIn recruitment stats. Let's talk about the Celts. They had the Wicker Man. It wasn't just a weird Nicolas Cage movie, you know? They'd build a massive wooden cage shaped like a giant, fill it with livestock and people, and set it on fire. The Druids believed this would ensure a good harvest, because nothing says grow more wheat than a giant human barbecue. In ancient Hawaii, if you broke a kapu or sacred law, like eating a banana if you were a woman, the penalty was death. But there was a catch. If you could run fast enough to reach a city of refuge, you were totally forgiven. It was basically a high-stakes game of tag. If you touch the base, the executioners have to go home. Rules are rules. Then there's the trial by ordeal in medieval Europe. Not exactly ancient, but definitely stupid enough to count. To prove your innocence, you had to pick up a red-hot iron bar. If your hand healed in 3 days, God said you were innocent. If it got infected, well, that's God saying guilty. Also, enjoy your gangrene. Double loss. The Incas had capacocha. They would take the most beautiful children and march them up to the top of the Andes. They'd give them coca leaves and chicha beer until they fell asleep, then leave them there to freeze. The Incas thought they weren't dying, but becoming protectors of the mountains. It's a nice story to tell at a very cold funeral. Ancient rituals were basically just people trying to control a world they didn't understand with a lot of blood. We think we're better now, but we still have rituals, like Black Friday. That's pretty much a human sacrifice for a 4K TE. At least the Aztecs got a cool pyramid out of it. All we get is a slightly cheaper screen to watch cat videos on. Which ritual was the worst? Let me know in the comments. I'm leaning towards the Wicker Man. Too much smoke. Also, if you're a god and you're watching this, please don't be offended. I'm just a guy with a drawing tablet. I'd rather not be turned into a drinking cup or a lung-winged eagle. I like my internal organs where they are. Subscribe for more history that your teachers were too scared to tell you, mostly because of the lawsuits. Stay safe, stay sane, and for the love of everything, don't drink the lacquer tea. See ya.